Greetings, my name is Dan Fernandez and I'm a faculty member at CSU Monterey Bay. This is a repurposed sermon, this presentation, that I delivered at the Unitarian Universalist Church of the Monterey Peninsula sometime in 2014. And it was originally called Purpose and Repurpose. So I guess you could call this presentation Repurposed, Purpose, and Repurpose. I begin with a few quotations. Gautama Buddha once said, "Your purpose in life is to find your purpose and to give your whole heart and soul to it." William Shakespeare once wrote, "The devil can cite scripture for his purpose." Here's another quote. "I went to a bookstore and asked the saleswoman, 'Where's the self-help section?' She said that if she told me, it would defeat the purpose." That was George Carlin. And finally, Sidney J. Harris once wrote, "The purpose of education is to turn mirrors into windows." A while back, during the California drought a few years ago, I attended a conference called Eco Farm, and it was at the Silmar Conference Center, right on the beach. And we had a rain dance on the beach on the final day of the conference. And as is sometimes the case, I question my motivation or purpose for participating in such events. After all, has it been scientifically proven that such rituals are possible, or even likely to relinquish waters from the heavens? I can imagine a judgmental, scornful, or perhaps a wistful eye from a past roommate, colleague, instructor, or professional mentor if they found out I participated in a rain dance. On the other hand, I find the ritual powerful. A reflection on our dependence on this precious substance, that is water, paying homage to our Native American and other cultural roots that have engaged in these kinds of ceremonies in such times of need. It also communicates to all of the other participants that we are in this together, that we all share this need, that we are all human, that we are all part of one another, and that we are all part of something bigger than ourselves. Plus, I really enjoy the physicality of dance, including such ritual dance where I engage in continuous rhythmic movement and utterances. We did so on the sand at a Silmar beach for over an hour. There is a flow to such activities, and that flow helps me to thrive. If I question the purpose of this activity, I can also fairly question the purpose of many other activities in which I or others engage in for spiritual growth and maintenance. Meditation, prayer, giving thanks, even exercise such as walking, running, biking, or swimming. Going to church, maybe making presentations such as this one, or engagement in any other social or interactive activity. Even acknowledging the presence of another human being through a friendly glance or greeting. Do these serve a purpose beyond daily mechanical completion of tasks? What is that purpose? And what is purpose? Unlike many of my perhaps purpose is in the eye of the beholder. And unlike many of my colleagues at the university in the School of Natural Sciences, I did not receive my formal higher education as a scientist, but I studied electrical engineering all the way from my bachelor's degree to my PhD. Although it's been nearly 25 years since I turned in my dissertation, it was only a few years ago that I realized that, unlike scientists who are not formally trained to ask what the deeper purpose of something is, engineers are supposed to be trained to create products that have purposes, possibly purposes that had not even been considered, and to ponder what those purposes are and to make a better widget, a better road, a better bridge. We're often supposed to build things which, ironically, I was never quite good at doing. So I question whether I really learned about a sense of purpose through any of my formal education. It also occurs to me that I may have been better served by a liberal education, perhaps in philosophy, writing, religion, or the arts, where someone may seek deeper answers to questions of purpose. Maybe I picked the wrong major. I would also like to look at several aspects of purpose and repurpose. One of those aspects is about stuff. It certainly has a big environmental context. Beginning with those things that I own. I want to then look at the stuff of society, what purposes this stuff serves, and finally, the ideas of purpose that we ascribe to ourselves. I grew up learning not to waste, and quite frankly, I'm fairly obsessive in minimizing the waste I create. For instance, my wife and I get takeout food and bring our own containers so that we often generate no trash when we go to restaurants. I make it my daily regimen, my daily purpose, to see how little waste I can create. Why is this? Perhaps it lies in my roots. My father was raised poor in World War II Spain, and he often went hungry. An egg for him was a rare treat, and to this day he dislikes lentils, because that's all he could eat most of the time. My mother's parents were poor Jewish immigrants from Poland, and they experienced very challenging times that fortunately led them to this country prior to the Holocaust. They wasted nothing. My mother's grandmother was known for making clothes out of any waste fabric she could find, even burlap bags. My great-grandfather was known for saving tea bags and making dozens of cups of tea from a single bag. I think I've inherited or absorbed some of those family values, and in trying to find purpose in what we want to get rid of. This can go to extremes, and I've occasionally obsessively collected or even hoarded objects of all types with repurposing fantasies in mind. That screw that is just the right size for the project I'm working on. That broken piece of tile that must have a use for something. This is possibly an admirable aspiration, until I get to the point where I cannot find what I know I have saved. As an informed citizen, I know that every object takes energy and resource to create. So every time I can keep from having to expend more energy, more raw materials, I feel like I may have accomplished something. Something small, but something. So the process of repurposing things provides for me a personal sense of purpose. Scale this up to a regional, a state, a nation, or society as a whole. At this level, despite the best of intentions of people like you, like me, and like others of similar minds, it is often market forces that drive decisions affecting purpose and repurpose. Huge populations in the developing or developed world demand products such as cars, iPads, and televisions. Despite the demands, many of these people survive at a subsistence level and welcome the opportunity to collect millions of tons of older manufactured products for reuse, repair, or scrap value. In his book, Junkyard Planet, Adam Minter describes the abominable environmental conditions that surround such regions as Weinan County, China, perhaps the world's largest center for plastic recycling. Although the workers face enormous health issues with unregulated toxic fumes and the dirty, stinky, noisy environment characteristic of much of the industry of this former bucolic county, there is no shortage of labor. The incomes most can make far exceed those that come from farming. Minter makes the point that repurposing efforts, despite their adverse environmental and health consequences, reduce landfill waste, generate income, and provide a supplement to the minerals obtained through worldwide mining operations. These operations provide for the burgeoning manufacturing sector of the developing world. Mining, which is necessary for growing industrial economies, results in enormous degradation of both the environment and human health. For instance, the Pebble Mine for copper and gold in Alaska will likely devastate salmon fisheries as a result of the release of sediments and sulfur compounds that choke out and acidify local waters. Or the tar sands open pit mines in northern Canada that have obliterated massive areas of wildlands that are fueling the push for the Keystone XL pipeline. or the copper mines in Chile, one of the world's leaders in producing this ore, with enormous environmental and social consequences for the people who live there. So repurposing materials found within obsolete manufactured items may reduce the demand on much more energy-intensive and much more environmentally damaging and usually more risky human behavior or human labor. In effect, we're exchanging something that is highly destructive for something that is less destructive, but it's still destructive since it takes energy and materials to reuse things. But this is repurposing. As an idealistic individual, I'm not particularly heartened by this revelation. I want to see repurpose, but not at the expense of human health or environmental health. But I do want it to offset our demand for extraction of more natural resources. Can this happen? Will this happen? Perhaps, but changes of such scope can be slow. However, cognizance of why things are as they are is often a necessary catalyst for change. Regarding humans, there are often two distinct camps of how purpose is ascribed toward our role with the natural world. One is that the world is here to serve our purposes, to meet our needs, and to be used, or in some cases ravaged, as we see fit. Another view is that we are necessarily intertwined with the plants, the animals, the microbes, the soil, the water, the earth, and the sky. This is consistent with the work of environmentalist Aldo Leopold, who wrote that, quote, "An intelligent humility toward man's place in nature is in order," end quote. Either viewpoint addresses a consideration of a sense of purpose. You can probably imagine where I stand on this, as far as which side I would sit on. In his book, Earth in Mind, author, activist, and professor Dr. David Orr describes that higher education has been shaped by the drive to extend human domination to the fullest, and that in so doing, human intelligence may have taken the wrong road. In other words, we try to manage everything. He goes on to say that the complexity of the earth and its life systems can never be safely managed by us, and that even the ecology of the top inch of soil is largely unknown. What we can manage, however, is our own economies, politics, communities, and our own desires. Does this perhaps define a more productive role for our purpose than in managing planet Earth? Since these human constructions that Dr. Orr describes are ones that can be, shall I say, fickle, then perhaps our purposes are ones that are not fully defined, but ones that are always changing and are dynamic, and which help us address what we have at hand. Is our purpose a string of daily tasks that tie together to create the fabric of life that we all take to be reality? Or is it something that guides us, in a big picture kind of way, helping us to shape our days in a manner consistent with our own grand scheme? Maybe it is elements of both, the big picture and the small woven together in a tapestry that helps define our today and our tomorrow. Renowned singer, songwriter, and activist Pete Seeger passed away in 2014 at the age of 94. He put his musical talents towards social and environmental causes and has an amazing record of activism that dates back to the Spanish Civil War. He is known for many popular songs in my religious tradition of Unitarian Universalism, and he himself was a Unitarian Universalist. He actually passed away the week before I gave this sermon. So at the time, this was very timely, and I think his message is still very timely. One of his songs addresses today's theme perfectly, and to me it describes the ephemeral nature of purpose. Fitting for inclusion here, all but 6 of the words in Seeger's song come from the book of Ecclesiastes. The other 6 words were written by Seeger, along with the adaptation to the music. So with that, let's now take a moment of silence to honor the life of this great man. Writer and publisher Maria Rodelli states that, quote, "We must heal the human heart before we can heal the planet," end quote. I also find her viewpoint reflected in the quotation by Margaret Atwood that goes, quote, "What am I living for and what am I dying for are the same question," end quote. Maybe these viewpoints help to define my role, our role, as purposeful human beings on a planet that needs our help so that we can flourish. As I draw this presentation to a close, please consider the words of writer David Richo. I am thankful for the enduring capacity to love that has come to me from the sacred heart of the universe. May love always be my life purpose, my bliss, my destiny, the richest grace that I can receive or that I can give. And may I always be especially compassionate towards those who are lost, or least, lone, or last. Thank you.